We've got an interesting interview for you today. Roger Boswarva got involved in Scientology in 1956 in Australia, and he became part of the staff down there and got a lot of people involved in Scientology, eventually moving to the United Kingdom, and then was a public Scientologist up until he finally was kicked out in 1983. And you're going to hear his story about what he thinks of L. Ron Hubbard, what he thinks of Scientology, and about his life. So this should be interesting. I think you're going to enjoy this interview. G'day, everybody. I am here, Mark Fisher. Our channel is Scientology Peeling the Onion. I'm here with my co-host, Janice Gillum-Grady. How you doing, Janice?
I'm doing good, and g'day, everybody. And today is a g'day.
A g'day. Yeah. We've got a special guest. Now, I wanted to tell everybody, this is an interview with somebody who has been in or was in Scientology in the 1950s, okay, in Australia. You're going to hear his story. And he knew your parents, right, Janice? So we're going to hear about that too?
Yes, he did know my parents. And funnily enough, they actually came into Scientology, I believe, through the same American who was in Sydney back in the 50s. But then they didn't meet till several years later.
Yeah, and today he's in New York, and he's 88 years young, and we're really, really happy to have him here because he's an old timer in terms of Scientology, and we would like to hear about what Scientology was like in the 50s and 60s and when he was around. So, Janice, why don't you go ahead and introduce him?
Yeah, and Roger's actually known me since I was 6 years old, so that kind of adds to it. So our special guest today is Roger Boswarva. I'm sorry, Roger.
It's perfectly fine. A lot of people want to say Boswarva. You almost got it right. You always put the Z in there.
I had it right earlier.
Roger, what's the origin of your last name? What's the heritage?
Believe it or not, it's English. It's actually ancient Celtic. Yeah. There's a location where I've actually been, location down in Cornwall, named Boswarva. And the highest peak on the peninsula down there was, like, by English standard, the mountain range, but it's only 2,000 feet high. It's called Boswarva Khan. And it being ancient Celtic, the name actually means high dwelling. Oh. In England, you get lots of places called Boscanny, Boscastle, Boswell. It all means high whatever.
Oh, okay.
Boswarva is high dwelling. So there you go. That's my ancient.
Well, good.
Whatever.
Well, I have family ancient history in Cornwall as well.
Yeah.
So there you go. I mean, isn't that true that I'm making a joke right now, that the English sent everybody down to Australia, and that's how they ended up down there, you know, the ones that are desirable?
Let me make a correction on that. That was after they couldn't send them anymore to America.
Right.
Okay.
America
revolution going on. Yeah. Right, Roger?
America was the original convict colony. Yep.
There you go.
That's right. And the revolution happened, and the boats kept filling up, and it was like, where do we send these people now? So off went the first fleet to the unknown continent.
The other side of the earth, even.
That's right.
Actually, I was out there 2 weeks ago. I had my wife, who died in 2021, I think, from memory. We had a little bargain. We were wanting to retire back in Oz in Sydney, where I grew up.
Yeah.
And on the particular beach where I was the champion, I used to swim. I used to train, 6 miles a day swimming. And so the trick was, being 22 years older than she was, we expected me to pop off first, logically.
Right.
And so I wanted my ashes to be spread out into the Pacific. And on the beach, Bronte Beach, where I grew up, there's a famous rip current on the southern end of the beach called the Trans-Tasman Express. And if you're not a good swimmer and you get caught in that son of a bitch, your first port of call is New Zealand.
How many days would it take to get there?
Well, actually, it wasn't too bad. 23 hours to get to Sydney, plus the stopover time in LA, because it's 6 hours to LA against the jet stream, and 16 hours non-stop from LA to Sydney, plus the stopover waiting to catch the next connecting flight. Coming home is a little quicker because you got the jet stream up your tail. So basically, it was 23 and 22 hours actual flying time.
Right. Yeah, I've done the 16 hours from LA to Sydney or Melbourne.
Yeah.
No, I was talking about the riptide. How long does it take you in that riptide to get from the beach across to New Zealand?
I never tried it. The place has too many sharks. I'm too smart.
I was going to say, you probably turn into fish food on the way, right?
Exactly.
Now, we actually, it's pretty shark infested. We've actually had 2 shark attacks in the last, like, 18 months. So it's no joke, you know.
Yeah. When you were a lifeguard down there, did you run into shark issues?
I trod on one actually in 1950. I was 14 or 15 at the time, and I was surfing on a long board. It was 16 feet long. In those days, they were used for racing and rescues. They weren't hot dog boards like you got now, the short ones. And I lost the board, and I got washed in over the sandbank, which was sort of close to chest deep. And it was in the channel between the bank and the shore. And it was hard getting across the bank. And I saw something in front of me that I wanted to step up on to get a lift off so I could catch a bit of the swell coming in behind me. And when I trod on it, the bloody thing moved.
Oh, God.
Like about 6 foot of meat.
Yeah, that's not comforting.
I tell you, I performed the second miracle of walking on water.
I'll bet. Well, let's go ahead, and I'm going to show what you look like. You were a lifeguard in Australia, right? And this is what you looked like back in the day, right?
1950, that was 1958. In 1954, I won a gold medal in the Australian Surf Swimming Championships up in Queensland. So the reason I gave you that photo, that played a little bit of drama in the church, because being an Australian champion, when I went down to Melbourne, it was like, for the Melbourneites, it was like, wowza. It's like with all your celebrities now. They like to, you know, make a big song and dance about it, some of them.
Right.
But as Janice knows or will remember, Peter Williams, he could not stand anybody else in his presence who had any presence or who was somebody. He had to be the silly star. And here's the idiot that literally welcomed the inquiry into Melbourne, Scientology.
Right. Now, Peter Williams was the executive director of the Melbourne Hazy.
Right. At the time, just prior to the inquiry, what happened, Hubbard wouldn't let him get off the briefing course. Hubbard wanted to keep him there because he was such a mess of a case. And word was from the other folk that came back from St. Hill, because I was on staff in Melbourne 62, 63. And they wouldn't let him come back. But I got into Scientology mainly as a research project, because my next door neighbor in Sydney was Forbes Carlyle. Now, Forbes Carlyle was on faculty at Sydney University, And he was doing research into athletic performance. And in the 50s, he being my neighbor, I was a member of his guinea pig team. We used to do the research on, and we're finding out just how best we could condition athletes, and also what nutrition they really needed and all that sort of jazz. So that began my research into athletic performance. So in 1957, I got interested in what else could improve our performance. And we did a little bit of research with some hypnosis and a bit of psychology. Not really, but, So I went off investigating, could the mental factor improve performance? And I found a book in a bookshop, which was Dianetics, Modern Science of Mental Health, which had a card in it singing the praises of this applied psychology center in Sydney, run by Marcus Tooley, who's the American.
Yeah.
Janice mentioned that got her parents in. And he was running this center in Circular Quay, Sydney, which is the main crossroads of all the ferries and transportation systems in Sydney. He was a brilliant introductory lecture man, and apparently he was trained in London. He met Hubbard in London and came back to Sydney. So that was that gig. So in those days, training routines, we call them affectionately TRs, were newly released. It was in about the mid-50s, it became part of the imperative training to become a Hubbard professional validated processor or auditor. The training routines were part of the validation process. Well, you will walk off straight off the street as a new person, done nothing. You'd hear about the anatomy of understanding and all those charmers. And then we would do one straight hour, doing training routine 0, sitting opposite somebody else. It's a drill called confronting.
Right.
It's wrongly named, actually. It's a silly name because it makes you sit there confronting somebody else. It's rather antagonistic.
I have a question for you. Okay, so was that the beginning of the training routines, where people, trained,
yeah, I think,
and the bull baiting and all of that?
It might have been introduced earlier in 57 because I got involved in December. It was summer 57. Okay. I was still swimming. They may have been introduced a little earlier, but I think it was at the end of 56.
Wow.
But that was about it. But it's easily checked up in the red volumes I got down on the floor there.
Oh no, that's okay. I had never heard when they started, that's pretty.
That's when they started.
Let me ask you 2 questions. Number 1, what's HASI, Janice? HASI.
Yeah, that's the Hubbard Association of Scientologists International.
Yeah.
And that was the name of the organization. So.
Right.
So in Melbourne, it was when you referred to the org, you didn't say the org, you said the HASI.
Yeah. Yeah, we always referred to the HASI in those days. It came an org later on when Hubbard did his org boards and organizational charts and all that sort of jazz. So anyway, 1 hour.
Well, hold on. I wanted to ask you one other question. So you got in 1956. You were looking like 57. This, right? Now, I wanted to ask you, about this, So you're saying that in those days, I'm sorry about my dog barking, but I want to ask this question. In those days, like in Australia, as a lifeguard, swimmer, or whatever, were you somewhat of a celebrity? Is that what you're trying to say? Like, back in those days?
Say that last word again. So
you were somewhat of a celebrity. In other words, you were somewhat well known in Australia, right?
Yeah, anybody who was an Australian champion, anything.
Yeah, Mark, he was a gold medalist. That's what made him a celebrity. It's just like Dawn Fraser when she won the Olympics and she was Australian, she became a celebrity for having won the Olympics.
No, I understand that. I just was trying to understand, like, it was like it's I didn't know what Australia was like in those days because it didn't have big, huge major sports. But if you were a gold medalist, of course, then you were very well known. And I understand now. Okay.
So what happened was eventually it was a good experience, 1 hour of confronting, as we also call the process, because what it did, which I didn't know till many years later, caused me to put my attention under my control and direct it. That's not a bad idea. So next morning, I go in and pull to do my usual 3 miles in the morning, because I used to do 3 miles in the morning and 3 miles in the late afternoon before dinner. I found that my attention being under my control meant that I was controlling my body with far more facility, easier, and wasn't actually hung up in what I'd already done, like swimming 3 miles. The body sort of notices it. So if you let your attention get hung up in, I've already bloody done this for 3 miles, I'm tired, it screws up your performance, particularly when you're racing. So I thought this was wondrous. Jesus, this stuff's good. That was wasn't a big mistake, but that was the biggest gain I probably got out of the whole parade. So anyway, in due course, we found that Marcus Tooley was rather dishonest. He wasn't giving us the real deal, and nor the real introduction to where was the technology available. We did not know there was an organization in Melbourne. His shtick was, if you want this stuff, you've got to go to London for it or talk to me.
Ah, okay.
Oh, wow.
Naughty. It would have been better being honest and putting everybody on lines and everybody win. So a group of us, and we were being ripped off by him to a certain extent. So a group of us got together and began to create our own little group. And I was one of two of us. The other guy was named Cable Hill. And Cable didn't like talking to people. Well, I used to coach all the teams and Bronny Surf Club, so I'm used to dealing with people. And of course, I can talk, as you can hear.
Right.
So we actually created this group, and I became the public lecturer, and so on and so forth and so forth. And that actually became the basis of Sydney organization, the Hassie Sydney, which got set up in later in 1960, actually, from memory, or 61. And so that was my introduction to Scientology. And then I went to Melbourne to do, in April 1960, after the ACC. I didn't get down to the ACC because I hadn't been trained.
Right.
You had to be a Hubbard professional auditor and HPA to go to the advanced clinical course.
Right.
So I eventually went down to Melbourne to do the first of the professional trainings made available in Australia in April 1960. That's when I got professionally trained in Scientology. And then I went back to Sydney and did my thing. And then eventually I moved down to Melbourne permanently from memory, 62. And it's the rest, as they say, is history. The trouble in Melbourne was that being a celebrity and not being bashful, when Peter Williams, who Hubbard wouldn't release from St. Hill because he was a case, I eventually got back to Sydney, and he was like the executive director and everything. One night in staff training, when in September 63, the process called service facsimiles, that's SC Scientology Clearing number 3 was the technical bulletin name. When that was released, it was released as a clearing process. And the interesting thing was, in those days, we did not know how that we were overrunning all of our clients. We didn't know that there was an end phenomenon for processes. We became aware of that in '63, around this time of the release of service facsimiles, and this caused a problem. It was Ross Turnbull and myself who raised the flag that, hey, we're running these processes too long and overrunning the client. And so then Hubbard came out with as the end phenomena. So I asked Peter Williams, you want to say something there, Janice?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, did you inform Hubbard directly? You wrote to him at St. Hill?
No, I didn't write to him on that issue.
Oh, okay.
I actually voiced it to Ross Turnbull, who was technical director.
Okay.
And he was on lines with Hubbard through the telex. Otherwise, I'd be writing a silly bloody letter.
Right.
So, and I just wanted to explain to our viewers what service facsimile is in Scientology, what that means. To make it really simple for you, it's basically handling somebody having to always be right. You know what I mean? I've got to be right no matter what happens. Even if you're wrong, I'm right, you know. And so
you are wrong.
Processing. Yeah, and you were wrong. And so that was something Hubbard, it was on grade 4 later. That's where I did it at. But basically that's what you were supposedly handling. Yes.
Yeah, an example of a specific person who has a lot of service facsimiles is David Miscavige.
That's correct.
Yeah. Right on. Oh, that cognition, Rog. I've never met the guy. So anyway, but Peter Williams was a walking service facsimile as well. And I tell you, he was a bucktooth little stupid person. I mean, seriously, nothing wrong with bucktooth, but he really acted it out. So what happened in staff training one night, he's introducing this or talking about this process that had just been released in September '63. And I said, well, that's all very good, Pete. How do you know when the process is flat? See? It was not really fully appreciated tech. And he started to yap, circuit, noise. I said, thanks, Pete, that's cool. But how do we know when the process is flat? I just repeated the bloody question, expecting an actual answer. He went into a psychotic break, totally went nuts, screaming nuts, went home and didn't service for a week. I mean, he went in a nutsville. So I ended up being fired from Melby staff. And the rest, they say, is history. So eventually I paddled off to England to do the briefing course, but I never got there. I ended up on staff in Sydney on the way to St. Hill.
Okay.
And because I like talking, I ended up taking over the introductory lecture and becoming in charge of all of the field staff members that I trained, just like I used to train the lads in the surfing team in the surf club, because I was a qualified instructor in Australian surf life saving as well. So training people is a no-brainer.
Can you explain for our viewers, what's a field staff member? Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, they're Scientologists who are not on full paid organizational staff, and their job is to find new people and introduce them to Scientology for a commission.
Right.
10% of the fees paid by their selectee. So my job became to train all these guys to sell Scientology, which I could do, because I actually earned a lot of money in Australia in marketing, advertising, and selling. So that was the trick. And so I was on staff in Sydney, and then it gets bloody silly. Then the poop hits the fan and got spread everywhere. Seriously, I mean, this is where it all blew up. Here I am running. Eventually, I ended up being promoted up to running the public divisions. And I have the highest production statistics in the world. I'm actually producing more new names to CF as the statistic than any continental zone of orgs in the world. And this gets noted by Mary Sue down in St. Hill, because this was 67. She was still there at the time. And so I'm getting all sorts of commendations and recognitions for being a genius at running my positions in London Org. In fact...
Oh, so we skipped. You were talking about being in Sydney on your way to St. Hill.
Well, I went from Sydney to Melbourne staff. And
right.
then from Melbourne in 1957...
58?
No, 50, I forget, probably 56 or 57. Because I was on staff in London in 57 through into 58.
Oh, okay. Okay, so before.
Yeah, those days we used to go by ship. We didn't fly.
Right.
I was...
done that.
Either P&O line or the Italian line. And so, it was like whatever it was, 3 weeks sailing off to Europe. So eventually I called in on London Org and decided to give them a hand there. And that's how I got involved in training their FSMs and then running the public divisions. But at the same time, I was dual-hatted. I was in charge of the FSM, the field staff members, running that department and training them, as well as running the public division's marketing of Scientology.
Right. Mark, you have a photo. Yes.
Yeah.
See,
now
this is this is... Go ahead, Roger.
Well, that's me as director of the clearing department, which is in charge of all the field staff members. That's the field staff members on one of the training courses I ran. I used to run the training courses regularly. We used to have a lot of fun.
But you had 70 enthusiastic field staff members at that one meeting.
Yeah.
So that just kind of shows how big your operation was, because that wouldn't even be all of them.
Yeah. I used to get 70 people to my introductory lectures, 3 nights a bloody week, mate.
Wow.
The St. Hill students used to come up to learn how to do introductory lectures. Now, it was Marcus Tooley in Sydney that actually clued me in on how to do a good introductory lecture.
What was the secret? What was your secret?
Well, the secret is actually consulting the understanding of your audience. What's new? But basically, was the subject matter. I was a wizard on the communication formula. In fact, I rewrote the communication formula rather recently. But the communication formula was very real to people, as was the anatomy of understanding, which is the 3 parts or corners of the anatomy of understanding, which is being in communication with something, really understanding what it is you're communicating with, having a high affinity for it, and being in agreement.
And so we're talking about the ARC triangle for those who were in Scientology. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that you explain that to people, and they go, "Wow, yes, of course." Yeah, and then they cognite, and then they tend to understand that this subject has something for me. And my lectures always dealt with changing their understanding of their game in life so they could win more. That's pretty logical.
Yes.
And people wanted more of it. And the answer was Scientology, right? In other words,
obviously the answer is what you need to do is go sign up for.
Right.
And as it happened, on the weekends, I also ran the communication course, which was the entry-level training routines.
Right.
Right.
And so that was a winning combination. So that was the key to getting all my new names to CF.
Central Files.
Central Files, yeah.
Yeah, and that's, to be honest with you, Roger, that's how I got in Scientology in 1974, 73. My dad was in Scientology already, but then he had me do the communications course. That was the gateway into Scientology, was learning how to communicate. And as a teenager, it was very helpful for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now,
fact,
Rod,
go on.
Roger, when he started out doing lectures like you did, he said that he would do a lecture and then a new bulletin would come out. And as the new stuff was released from Hubbard at St. Hill, he would do a new lecture on that.
Yeah. Very clever, wise man, your dad. In fact,
thank you.
In fact, one of the horror stories in 19 whatever year it was, 63 probably, that's right, when Hubbard sent out the bulletin saying, we've all been to heaven, I've been to heaven and so have you, and he introduced the infamous, terrible, horrible implant technology, and we would be being processed in the guidance center with a professional processor, and a new bulletin will be pushed under the door, not new bulletin as pushed in under the door. Your auditor would excuse himself, go pick up the bulletin and read and say, we have a change in the process.
Oh, jeez.
Changed the bloody process middle session. That's how wild it was in those days.
Yeah, that's like the Wild West.
Yeah, it was the early Wild West. So Peter Williams was mad and eventually got booted out. But I got booted off staff, so that's when I decided St. Hill Briefing Course is my next port of call, which took me to London. Well, London was a worse scene because for some reason or other, the Londoners had a tough time with outspoken Australians. I don't know why. We're a pretty agreeable lot.
We're agreeable if you agree with us.
And so here I am with the highest stats in the world, being given commendations and accolades by The Guardian and Mary Sue and everybody else, and at the same time being attacked by a new guy that's come on post to become the ED on the foundation, which I had been. I'd been ED and Director of Clearing and Public Divisions and everything. I was everything on foundation. So he came on to run the foundation, and the first thing he wanted to do was interfere with me.
All right, we'll be back to the show in a minute, but I wanted to talk to you all about a product that Janice has from her company, Outback Naturals, and it's called Koala Calm. Janice, what is it? Tell people about this product.
This is a product that my father developed. Must have been back in the late 80s. He came up with this. He always sold CalMag, calcium magnesium, which was a big seller. But his wife at that time had PMS issues, and so he started researching more and digging in, and he actually found she didn't need the calcium part, but what she needed was the magnesium part, because that helped break down the calcium and the body assimilate the calcium better rather than getting calcium deposits and kidney stones and that type of thing. So the magnesium helped dissolve that and help the body through by not having the calcium added with it.
Right, and it's really good for like people with anxiety or stress or having trouble sleeping. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely. I take it actually every night. I take it with 250 milligrams of B1, and I sleep very well, actually.
That's great. Now, how do people, if they get it, it comes in a powder form, right? So how do they actually, drink it or take it? What do they do?
Yeah, well, you heat up hot water. I don't microwave. I just have a kettle and I heat up the hot water, and I fill up half a cup of hot water, and then I add the the amount of magnesium powder that I need. If I put the powder in first and then pour in the hot water, it fizzes and spills all over and makes a mess. So I do the hot water first. I add the magnesium. I don't put the spoon in because, again, it's going to fizz all over the place. So I just let it then fizzle down on its own and do its own thing. And then I add water, cold water, or some ice to cool it down. And then I just take it with my B1.
Okay, and it comes in 2 flavors, right?
Yeah, I have apple cinnamon.
Okay.
And also unflavored plain. And some people like to add this to their orange juice and different things like that, or even their tea.
Yeah, I've used it in the evening too. If I need to, having trouble go to sleep, I'll heat up some water, put some of the koala calm in it, and then I'll just sip it while I'm watching TV or reading or whatever before I go to bed. And next thing you know, I go right to sleep. So if you're having problems with anxiety or stress, or if you're having trouble sleeping, it's really great for us. And of course, we're not getting any younger, any of us. So anyway, we recommend the Koala Calm. Now, I want to tell people how they can get it. You can actually order right now today at our store. Just go down to the tab down below, click on it, and you can find the Koala Calm there. It's $19.99 plus shipping and handling in the United States. And you can just order it there. But Janice, in the non-US, how can people order the Koala Calm?
They can just go to Amazon.com and order it there because they have international shipping and so forth. But Mark, there's also something else I wanted to comment on. My dad would always tell me that he would take magnesium sometimes if he's feeling tired. He would just take the Calm because it would help give him energy throughout the day. And he'd just add it to his water bottle and drink it throughout the day.
That's great. That's just another way that you can try out the Koala Calm and get some benefit from it. So anyway, if you're interested in the product, Koala Calm from Outback Naturals. Okay, now back to our show.
But eventually, in 1967, a woman by the name of Sue Littler, she was the HCO Hubbard Communication Office Executive Director, part of the Exec Council for the organization. She was refusing to implement Hubbard's policy, which was written on red on white, as it happens. It was in bulletin form, on FSM, as Field Staff Member Awards. Now, Field Staff members were granted awards for every 10 selectees they brought into the organization, right? Right. And also it happened that London organization was an FSM Field Staff member to St. Hill. So I said, hey, we are owed lots of briefing courses for our staff. Why don't we start getting our staff trained? That's a smart idea. She refused to go along with implementing that policy. Quite a vicious bitch. So I said, well, hey, you're violating the old man's policy, which strikes me as being sensible. So I said, I've got no option to protect myself by giving you a job endangerment chit, which is standard tech, right? Janice knows all about this.
Yes.
So I issued her a job endangerment chit. She was very huffy about that. But I'm still protected by the executive director, who was my direct boss, named Ellen Jones. Now, Ellen was a real star.
Yes, remember I knew Ellen. Yeah, I remember Ellen. She just recently passed away a couple of years ago.
Yeah, and Mark preceded her. Remember Mark Jones?
Yes.
He was one of the most elegant, on the ball, decent people I've known. Now, he was a colonel in the U.S. Marine Air Corps. And at one stage, he was actually the director in charge of the atomic resource, or atomic arsenal and resources in Asia, which included our engagement in Korea, because he was in the military during the Korea escapade. So that was Mark. Now, he was a class act. He's the guy that talked me into taking over the posts I took on in London for which I'll always be grateful for him, because I really learned a lot doing that job.
Right.
So what then happened is Mark and Ellen went to do OTIFI, Operation Thetan 3, aboard flag in beginning of April 1963. And who got sent up to London to take the ED's place while they were off? Sue Littler's husband, who was the follow director down at St. Hill at the time. Follow was flag office, liaison officer, or some bloody flag in. So it was part of the management hierarchy. So he came up to London with express instructions from Alan to leave Roger alone. He is the source of our affluence up here. So guess what the first bloody thing he decided to do was interfere with me and stop me from doing my public lectures.
Oh, dear.
So when Alan took off, the org stats were in power, as were mine. They were chronically in power. And when this idiot had been in the place for a week, the stats crashed to non-existence. So when I learned that on a Thursday, I went to the telex, and I can't type, bloody slow. And I mean, I still can't touch type. I type by looking. So I get to the telex, and I start up the machine, and I open my telex with Distribution Secretary, London here, bypassing a danger condition, opening words. And then I reported all that I saw, that it crashed the stats. Now, you would think that somebody with more than half a brain down in where the telex went would actually come up and investigate exactly what I had reported.
Right.
Bloody no. They investigated me. You're familiar with this kind of shit, are you, Janice?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, I am. Yep, that's how it goes.
Here I am, the guy with the highest stats on the planet, the most accolades, the most bloody everything, reporting obvious insanity. For Christ's sake, come and fix these guys.
Yeah.
And they grab hold of me and start checking the eyeballs out of me over a tired body, no sleep. And I'm going, this is bullshit. You go mad. Hey, read my report and look at her ethics folder. There's a job endangerment shit in there. They didn't want to hear that. So Jill Van Staten, who was the idiot who was the Sea Organization missionaire that came up, she was guilty for assigning me as an enemy and rooting me off staff. Because in those days, they treated
that must have been 67, 68.
It was April 68.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that was me out of London org. So I eventually, followed policy, called for a last court of border review, wherever it's called, got my name cleared, but screw them. I wasn't going back on staff.
Right.
And what I did while I was out, this gives you an idea of how insanely criminal Tim Littler and his wife, Sue Littler, were. In order to earn a living, I went around to the insurance companies in England and sold sales training. And what did I deliver for sales training? The Com course, plus Roger's brilliant lectures and ability to sell and stuff like that. So the old introductory lecture, which I used to do 3 nights a week for the org. So I did an hour on the introductory lecture, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Ran some TRs on them, brought up their confront, and sales went through the roof. I ended up with 3 insurance companies wanting my services to train their staff. Sales were being increased by over 100%. And people were going into the org wanting more Scientology. One of the outfits was Bernie Kornfeld's outfit called Investors Overseas Services, and which in London traded as International Life Insurance Company, because you couldn't sell investments direct to the public in England because of whatever bloody law it was. So
Right.
they would sell an insurance policy linked to life insurance, linked to a mutual fund, which was the fund of funds by Bernie Cornfield. So they told me they had 5,000 salesmen they wanted to have trained. I thought, shit, Rod, you're going to be rich, mate. Because I was charging them per head. So what happened is London Org, via the HCO, Hubbard Communication Office Exec Sec Sir Littler, sent letters to my 3 insurance company clients, Investors Overseas Services, well, only one of them, threatening to sue them for misuse of their copyright material. Now, you would have thought that any Scientology executive worth half a brain would want 5,000 salesmen stampeding into the services.
For sure.
But what do these dumb sons of bitches do? Cut the flow.
Yeah.
That gives you an idea of how insane these people are. And I give you that tale of continuing woe because the same shit happened here in New York. Helping out, I ran some FSM field staff member courses, and I was running a field staff member course in the Celebrity Center here in Manhattan. And because I was doing various things here in Manhattan, I came to the U.S. in December. That's why I came over to do audited knots originally at Flag. Then I got on to solo. I was the first person in New York City on solo knots.
What year is this you're talking about? You're talking about like 1980?
Now, 79 is when I went to Flag
right.
for the first time.
Right,
and 1980 was then solo knots, or 80,
right.
81, somewhere.
81, yeah, somewhere in there.
Something like that. And what happened, you see, I'd fully paid up to OTA. Briefing course, FEBC, I'd fully paid everything that was available. Even though it was not being delivered, it was available to purchase, advanced purchase. And my thing was I did not want to join the Sea Org because I wanted to join the Sea Org, but I did not want to actually join and root on until I'd done all of my training that I wanted to do, which I'd paid for.
Right.
I'm an upstart, what can I say?
Right.
So I'm in London doing my solo knots, etc., 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 and helping out in the org, running FSM training, and the Celebrity Center, where my girlfriend at the time was a celebrity. She was an artist, sweet kid. So I'm running this FSM course. We had about 50, 60 people at the Celebrity Center, and some from the West Side Mission as well, all came across for the weekend. And on the Sunday, Don Larson, who was mad.
Oh, yeah, finance police.
Yes, he had been an ethics officer in St. Hill, screwed up there as well. I mean, a disaster. So he arrives, and it happened to be the next weekend, or whenever it was during that week, they were going to have a flag briefing, which none of us knew about. But he was there as an advance man to promote it. So what he decided to do was kill the training that I was delivering for the FSMs and put them all on the phones. Well, there was only 3 phone lines at the I had 50 people, and they're standing around waiting their turn to get on the bloody phones to ring somebody that they knew to tell them about the event that was happening whenever it was bloody happening.
Right.
Well, I had a lot of upset, very upset, pissed off people on my hands coming to me saying, what should we do? And my standard action, well, if you think something's been done that's wrong, write up a report.
Chit.
Or a shit, yeah. A shit. Well,
Right.
the word got to Don Larson that I was, causing people to report on him. He didn't like that.
Oh,
So then I get attacked. Again, sack checked to the eyeballs, having demanded that my solar nuts materials be returned. I wasn't giving them to him. I said, the only place these solar nut materials are going are back to the solar nuts unit when they request them. They go no bloody where else. Because, so that caused me to then be booted out of Scientology again.
wow.
So that was me, screw them. And what had happened, there's the news clip there of Agent 007 for the Businessman Abroad.
I don't have
No,
that.
no, that was a document he couldn't transfer over.
Oh, okay. Well, that was a New York Times write-up, business section. It's actually effectively almost a full page. And one of the things I was doing in London in the days when I was persona non grata, I was running a marketing consultancy and sales training, as I told you. But the marketing consulting thing didn't infringe and didn't involve red on white Scientology copyrights. So I'm doing my thing using an accommodation address. And you know what they are? You rent space.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
They answer your phone for
like an
you.
executive suite.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So I've got my corner, and this other guy, friendly fellow, named, affectionately known JFS. His wife doesn't really want me to mention his full name. She's still alive. He died some years ago. But he actually was in the special branch in Rhodesia. And he actually was very much, being in the special branch, aware of Hubbard's escapade in Rhodesia.
Oh, okay.
Which I didn't know when we met.
Right.
I found it out later.
And for our viewers, special branch, I'm assuming, was British intelligence. You like spies?
Well, yeah, it's actually a unit of the regular police establishment, and it's their special branch. And in his case, he got promoted up to being a director of intelligence for Southern Africa, as Southern Rhodesia and South Africa, because those were the days in the 60s when the communists were trying to really cause all sorts of strife out there.
Right.
And so he got shipped off by the South Africans and Rhodesians to Europe to gather intelligence on who were the communists sending back to Africa to cause strife. And it turned out he got betrayed by Harold Wilson's government. They were setting him up to have him kidnapped and knocked off. And luckily, one of his friends in British intelligence got wind of this and grabbed hold of John and said, "What's your drink, John?" John says, "Oh, brandy, or cognac, Courvoisier," and which I don't like. I prefer Armagnac. Actually, got more flavor. So anyway, the guy ordered a double and said, "John, drink this. I got something to tell you." And he told him about the setup to have him kidnapped and murdered.
Oh.
Now, he was a new father with a young son, a son probably 5 or 6. So he simply resigned service and was then running effectively a detective agency and doing security work, bodyguard work in London for those who he could get hold of. So he approached me, finding out that I was in the marketing gig, and said, "What would you do to market my services, Rog?" And I looked at what I was doing, and I could actually see having lots of consultants, not just poor old Roger working his heart out alone solo, you see, because we had a whole reservoir of retired British colonial service types, civil servants, from the colonial service, and they were in government service in intelligence and the British government outposts around Africa. So I'm going, oh Jesus, this is multiplication. A lot more staff earning a lot more money than me doing dollars per hour shit. So I said, John, I'll start on Monday for 1% of the extra business I bring you. He said, okay. So we ended up as partners, his wife and me, the three of us. And we got written up by the New York Times, nearly a full page. Him being the headliner, Agent 007 for the businessman abroad. So that was whatever year it was. I think it was 77.
So that was after you, weren't you the chaplain or something at St. Hill earlier than that?
Oh, I was chaplain at St. Hill, yeah. Not St. Hill, at London Org.
At London Org. Mark, you have a photo of that.
Yeah, I want to finish your story though here. What does this have to do with Scientology, this whole
Well, what happened is this part of it is I ended up being sent to the US, where I am now, to set up the US operations of our Agent 007 for the businessman abroad. Well, Diana Hubbard got wind of my activities in that vein, and also the fact that because of the London screw-ups, I ended up getting hold of Mo Budalong and saying, listen, you know, this is all bullshit. I'm not an enemy to the church, but I've been approached by people in touch with John, the first clear, was it?
John McMaster.
John McMaster, who are running the clearing course on the public, and, you know, breach of violation of confidentiality and ethics. And, you know, being the former director of clearing, every bastard knows me, and this is their target public. So I ended up working undercover for the for B1, as it was in those days.
The Guardian's office.
Guardian's
Bureau 1 was intelligence.
Right. So that's how I got involved in that. So the Guardian's office knew who and what I was and what I was capable of, because I had phenomenal connections. So here in America, after the Don Larson saga, it happened that a guy by the name of John Collins, who was on Guardian staff in St. Hill, knew about me and my connections, and told Diana that I may be able to help her and her mother because, you know, the FBI investigated the eyeballs out of her mother, and Diana was convinced that the FBI had broken the law in the what's called legally the prosecuting of the case. Now, not the prosecution of the case in court, but the prosecuting of the case prior to getting it to court. In other words,
are you talking about the Snow White raids, the infiltration of the U.S. government? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, those were the crimes that were committed, but that's what the FBI was investigating. But the FBI investigation is called when they prosecute the case, to pursue the case, find out, you know, what are the crimes here that we can charge these people for.
Right.
And so I was asked to find out, did they break any laws in their investigation in the prosecuting of the case? Well, actually, I ended up interviewing the guy that actually conducted the raid on the church. Very charming man, very honest guy, and a very, he was actually, I think from memory, a Mormon. And it was a very down-to-earth, honest, respectful, courteous guy. And they didn't break any laws. They just did a proper, thorough, by-the-book investigation. Because he looked at me, he said, Roger, he said, we didn't need to do anything. He said, we actually had one of their insiders giving us all the information we needed. Whoever that was, what, Mesmerizer or Mesmer or some bloody Forgotten
Michael Meisner.
Michael Meisner.
Yeah.
Michael Meisner.
That was that. So, as you know, when you're on solo knots, you've got to go back to flag every 6 months to be sec checked.
Right.
So, guess what comes up on my sec check at flag?
That you're working for the Guardian's office
Well, they knew that already, but they hated the Guardian's office. By the time who was it? Who's running the bloody thing now? Miscavige took over. They were down on the Guardian, so anybody had a Guardian's office connection was like a criminal.
Yeah. Right.
So I was a particular criminal because I actually carried out an investigation into the FBI on behalf of the church, no less. Shit. I was obviously a criminal. So next time, being sec checked to death for helping Mary Sue and Diana at their request, and I get canned out of the church again. So my attitude is F-U-C-K them.
Right.
So is that when you left Scientology? Is that when you left?
When I was forced out again, I decided that's it. These guys are too bloody stupid to be connected with, and they are just criminally stupid.
Yeah.
Okay, and you've not been involved with Scientology since then, right? In terms of, okay, good. I just wanted to. That was the end for you.
No, I never went. Never. It's too much punishment, and in fact, the truth is, it's booby trapped, and there are too many errors in it. I mean, it is actually in the early days. I thought it was delivering a good product with difficulty, but the upper levels are totally fraudulent, totally booby trapped. OT3 is insane. But
that was when you left in 1983 or whatever it was when they finally said, oh, you're connected to this whole thing and your Guardian's office and all that. Okay. And that makes sense too, because Don Larson was part of the finance police. That was Miscavige taking over, getting rid of the finances, breaking up the mission network, breaking up anything that had to do with getting people into Scientology, going after people that were making money, they're stealing money, the World Institute of Scientology Enterprises, that type of thing. Now, but what I want to ask you, okay, so you didn't go back to Scientology. How long did it take for you to, as we say on our channel, peel your onion to the point where you said, you know what, this is, this part is not, this worked, but this didn't, and all that,
Well, it was after the Don Larson bullshit, and I think it was
283, 80.
The entry level, you see, if you look at the history of Scientology and the development of the tech, Western civilization were totally spiritually illiterate. And Hubbard comes along and says, you're a spiritual being, you've lived before, there's reincarnation. That was like very challenging information in the Western civilization in 1960.
Right.
See? I mean, if you go to India, well, of course, reincarnation, mon Dieu, yes. But in England, Australia, America, hell bloody no.
Right. No, we were Anglo-Saxon, Christian, Catholic society in those days. Yeah.
So it became, that's where I got my wins, making that, see, my big cognition that had me go, holy shit, this stuff is good, was in the early days at Marcus Tooley's center, we're all talking about past lives, and I'm saying, yeah, but prove it. What past lives? Well, you're spiritual, and it was all based on their logical thinking and opinion. But like, where was the proof of the fact that there's past lives, that we reincarnate? And so I had this like, yeah, I'll check it out type approach. Doing the training routines made me feel a bit better, made me feel better. I did the upper end doc. That gave me a bit more body control, which as an athlete, great. I wanted that.
Right.
And then what happened is we're doing one of the early processes called Formula 10 from memory or Formula 20 or whatever. And there's a listing question there, which will list for an item of a identity or valence that you could be in. And if you can't find one that reads on the meter, the e-meter, you then just take what red on white says, and the question becomes, from where could you communicate to the item? Well, the item I was given was a victim, because that was the item written in the red on white bulletin. It wasn't the assessment. Right. So I'm running, from where could you communicate to a victim? Took me 3 commands to suddenly get blown out of the chair. And here I am in a past life death. I was in the Battle of Trafalgar. I won't get into the identities, it's not important, but here I am, drifting up through the rigging of a man of war, cannon smoke everywhere, noise, and I'm very upset about the victims that I'd helped create, because I was an officer on the ship I was in, and that was my first past life experience that opened up, and I go, holy shit, they're right.
Right.
So that proved it to you. That proved it to you at the time.
It was experiential then.
Right. That's when you become a believer.
Yeah. I said, so no, I am spiritual. We do live before, and we do reincarnate. So then I really got switched on to applying the tech, and
Let me ask you this, Roger. So you obviously then dove in and you became the public lecturer and the field staff member program and all that, and you were getting people into Scientology because you were a true believer. You were dedicated. You were believed in what it could do, right? Okay. Then they got rid of you. You know what I mean? And basically in 82, 83, like I said, how long did it take for you to go like, oh, I'm still a true believer, but they kicked me out, to, hey, this stuff here, some of it works, but the rest of it's bollocks or whatever.
Yeah. It was mainly that I recognized that the organization was insane. It was unfunctionable. It was killing itself, and that it was going to blow up. And I said, who wants to be connected to these bunch of idiots? I'll go and do it myself. So that's when I then began to, because I was a familiar researcher. I'd research athletic performance.
Right.
You see? So it's easy to find out things. You go and perceive it. Go, look, for Christ's sake. So that was easy.
What are your feelings about L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology now that you've been away from it, because you were very much involved, obviously in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, getting people involved, and you thought there was some value there. So what are your feelings now?
What I know now, rather than what my feelings are, what I know is that Hubbard was a narcissistic sadist, a con man, a fraud, and a liar. Does that sum it up?
Carry on.
Are you missing a few more words?
Maybe you're more aware of some adjectives than I am, not having met the man, but actually studying his history and knowing the facts of what they found in the Melbourne inquiry, the fact that he was not a PhD. You see, in Australia in the 50s, anybody who got published by a mainstream publisher was a celebrity. I mean, it was somebody. You didn't get published unless you were somebody, but to have a PhD, Christ, that's godlike. Well, it's all bloody lies, you see.
And there was no internet to cross-check and all that kind of stuff back in those days.
So then, Roger, how do you explain the fact that he put together, I'm playing devil's advocate here, that he put together the training routines, the communications course, the things that you were actually having success with and actually helping people, confront things.
That's a good, right, and proper and correct question. The only answer I can surmise, it was obviously well read. He obviously listened to others a lot, because we keep hearing a lot from people who gave him their discoveries, which he then called his own, like the study tech, which he actually got wrong, by the way. The study tech.
The study tech.
He screwed it up. I can tell you what the screw up was later on, but we don't need to. But basically, he stole a lot of tech. But the fact is, he had so much courage, and as we would say in Australia, had some balls, that, and he was an insouciant kind of a guy. He believed in whatever he was doing and went and did it. And he pulled it off. So God bless him for doing that. I mean, he saved my life. I'd have probably been a drunken bum on the beaches of Sydney without Scientology. Seriously.
Right. Yeah.
But that was the early stuff. But the later stuff was criminally insane and irresponsible.
You're talking about the OT levels?
Yes, and the clearing course, all that crap, because he kept inventing new rundowns to make money.
Yeah.
He wasn't actually honestly or competently researching what the truths of existence are that we could then make workable tech hours.
I agree with you because, like, you know, I did OT3, I did knots, and I was on solo knots when I finally left. And like you said, you'd finish OT3, and next thing you know, oh, audited knots. Oh, you're looking for the same things. Yeah. Okay, then you get to solo knots. Oh, you're looking for the same things over and over again. You're spending lots of money. I was staff. I wasn't paying anything. But it's just like, I agree with you. It's just, it goes on endlessly, and it's just a big money-making thing.
That's all it is. And tragically, OT8 caused a lot of damage to a lot of people because it's obvious bullshit.
Yeah.
Roger, thank you so much for being a guest on our show. We want to really thank you there. I'm going to do some business here. If you would please subscribe to our show. You know, it makes it easy for people, you know, to find us on the YouTube algorithm. So for anybody out there who hasn't subscribed to our channel, please do subscribe to it. If you've got any questions or comments about what we've talked about today, just go down below and write any questions or comments, and Janice and I check them routinely, and we answer them there. And of course, if you'd like to support our channel, you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link down below, and you can buy us coffee. It's just a fancy way of saying donate to our channel. We appreciate any support that our viewers would give to us by buying us coffee. Janice or Roger, anything else you guys would like to say before we end off?
Well, for me, I'd like to say it was fun talking to you a lot, and thank you for the opportunity. It helped me actually clarify a few little points. But yeah,
good.
The church is a bunch of bloody confusion now.
Right.
Forget about it. It needs sauteing.
Well, thanks for being on the show, Roger. I really appreciate it, and being back in touch and talking about old times and my parents, and it was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, Pete was a good guy. My generation, what can I say?
That's right.
All right, everybody. Until next time, we'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye.